So we're going to talk about Firestarter. Obviously, this is not the new one. This is the original that came out in the 80s, 1984. I'm reviewing this because there is the remake that just came out on Peacock and in theaters. And I'll post a review of that soon. But I want to talk about this one first, considering, I want to have context for this review of the new one I'm doing. This movie is alright. Basically, if you don't know what Firestarter is, it was a Stephen King book about basically people who get like superpowers by being tested on at these government facilities and weird experiments with drugs and all kinds of weird stuff. And when you watch this movie, you really get reminded of Stranger Things. Basically, we have people on the run from the government, which happens in Stranger Things. We have people that, when they use their powers, most of the time involving their mind, they get bloody noses afterward. It stars a young girl who has powers that are incredibly dangerous, and she has to learn to control them. There's a lot of Stranger Things in here, and obviously, if you really know Stranger Things very well, you know that it's very influenced by Stephen King books and stuff like that. And this being a Stephen King adaptation, obviously, if you look at the font of Stranger Things, it's very obviously in the font of a Stephen King novel. So that's kind of how these things work. But I just find it funny watching. It's really interesting. This movie was okay. This is a movie that it basically belongs in the 80s and is a bit dated and a little bit dated now, because you have this movie that just the score and the way it sounds and just feels very 80s. The tone of it's kind of 80s, and this is also very it has some pretty significant flaws to it that really hold it back from being anything than just an okay movie. Like, it's a very watchable movie. It is kind of boring because, you're interested at first because it just throws you in to this dad and a daughter who are on the run from somebody. You don't really know who they are. Then you eventually learn it's the government, and then you see the dad, he turns a $100 bill into a $500 bill, or at least makes this guy look at, see the $1 bill is a $500 bill. Anyways, not important. But, you kind of get, okay, this guy's got some powers. And then you slowly get, okay, these guys are on the run. Here's why they're on the run. You flash back to more details. That's the biggest flaw with this movie, is you are thrown into these people on the run. You don't really know why they're on the run or details. I mean, you do eventually learn, but it's like, they should have set that up in the beginning of the movie and not, sprinkled throughout the movie. I don't know why she care about this girl. And then eventually you find out weird stuff like, okay, she murdered her mother using her powers. This is a scene that should have happened in the movie. This is a very soft rated R movie, and what I mean by that is you have a literal mention of someone's mother being burned to death, and yet you don't get to see that. And it's just weird. This is a very famous role for Drew Barrymore, and she's okay in the movie. All of her weak performances are just probably due to her just being so young. But it's fine. It's not that bad. She wasn't unwatchable. It's just a very strange movie because the tone of it is just very kind of 80s, and just that atmosphere. It feels like a very 80s horror movie, but not in a fun 80s horror movie, and just kind of this is alright. And there's just so many scenes where this movie just slows down for no reason. It's just not that engaging, not that interesting. It was okay. I enjoyed watching it. I think this Blu-ray edition is really cool. I'm definitely going to keep it. But honestly, this is definitely one of the weaker Stephen King adaptations I've seen. Not one of the worst, but definitely one of the weaker ones.